Hi there, it's Pastor Reece, and we thank you so much for watching today. We know this message is going to be a blessing in your life. Enjoy. You know, I mentioned just a few minutes ago how this is a Thanksgiving unlike any that I've experienced in my lifetime, and that's challenging. Travel's challenging, gathering in groups is challenging, especially here in Colorado. But it also presents some really unique opportunities. I know that tomorrow morning I'm going to try to set up a Zoom call with all of my siblings, something we've never done before on a Thanksgiving, and I never would have thought of that if it hadn't been for the fact that we've been doing Zoom meetings now for the last 9 months. And Thanksgiving it's just one of those times when I think it's important for us to look for the positive and not focus on the negative. Let's look for the things that we can be grateful about and not worry about the things that we frankly can't do anything about. You know, when you talk about the concept of Thanksgiving, especially here in America, generally we think of one of two things. And I found this really, really cool towel that I stole from my mother-in-law's house, actually, that says Thanksgiving. And it says it's one, either an act of expressing gratitude, or two, a time together with friends and family. And I hope you don't tell Marilyn about this because I like it enough I may not return it, but just something to think about it. And as we think about that, I know that is what the dictionary says. But tonight, I want us to consider Thanksgiving as an act, a natural result of being emotionally and spiritually healthy. You see, I believe that when we're emotionally and spiritually healthy, we naturally progress to being a person of gratitude. We're a person who recognizes the blessings of God and recognizes the people who are such an integral part of bringing, incredible joy and making this a life that's not only worth living, it's a life of celebration. And all of that begins when we realize that through Christ, any of us can become emotionally and spiritually healthy. When people are healthy, they're thankful for three things. They're thankful for what they have, they're thankful for what they don't have, and they're thankful for what they will have. What do we have that we can be thankful about? Well, all of us have something. All of us have families, either spiritual families or natural families. And I know, just speaking from personal experience, that every family has challenges, and some more than others. There's not a perfect family out there. Everybody's got a cousin that kind of gets on everybody's nerves. There's always, some tension about some issue that you're not even fully sure what the reason it's a tension, but it is a tension. There's always problems. But do you know the neat thing about families is no matter what, there's always an opportunity for God to come into the situation and bring reconciliation and healing. And if your family is in need of reconciliation this Thanksgiving, I want you to know that I'm praying for you, and I want you to join with me in that prayer and just believe God that during this holiday that there's a spark, a seed of restoration that's about to come in, and have hope that God is working in that circumstance. Did you know we can be thankful about our lives, how healthy we are? I'm at an age when I can't run anymore. I've got some hip issues and some ankle issues and some shoulder issues, and I just got issues, which result in me not being able to really run the way I did for like 30 years, and I miss running. But I can still walk. And if I couldn't walk, I know that I could still speak. And if I couldn't speak, I know that I could still pray and listen and be an encouragement to someone. There's always something that we can be grateful about. There's always something we can say, God, I'm so blessed to be able to have this. There's a lot of people who are talking about the demise of America, and they're talking about the fact that, the election either went the way you liked it or didn't go the way you liked it, and we've got all these problems with, health care and the deficit, et cetera, et cetera. But you know something? We live in an amazing place. As I was preparing this message, I saw online that there is a new civil war breaking out in Ethiopia, and it's a terrible tragedy. And I don't even know how we can help as a church yet, but maybe that opportunity will come up soon. But as soon as I saw that, I was taken back 20 years. 20 years ago, I was part of an advance team going into Sudan to help set up a crusade for Maryland. And while we were there, they took us out to these refugee camps. And there was a civil war in a nation called Eritrea, which is right beside Ethiopia. and all these Eritreans had left. When I say all these, I mean hundreds of thousands. And they'd come to Sudan because they were trying to escape the war, and they were gathered in these refugee camps. And we drove around, and we got to meet some pastors who were part of congregations in these really primitive conditions. Literally, I got to speak at a church that was made of walls that were basically earth with straw mixed in it, and just piled high with like a thatched roof. And they had me preach a Sunday morning sermon there, and it was really humbling. These people had a great attitude. They had a wonderful presence of God in all they were doing. And my guide, as we kind of toured this, and it was very bleak, and I said, talk to me about what life's like in this refugee camp. And he said, well, here are the two highlights of each day. In the morning, around 10 o'clock, the water truck comes by, and everybody lines up to get water for that day. And then in the afternoon, about 3 o'clock, the UN food truck comes by and distributes, rations, for that day or for that week. They sometimes didn't come every day. But that's pretty much the high points of the day. There's no television out here. There's no internet out here. Of course, it was early, before a lot of internet that was common around the world. But all they could do is sit and wait. And at that moment, I was just so grateful for the nation that we live in. And as I was preparing for this message, I was reminded that, we have a lot of problems. But ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot to be thankful for the nation that we live in. I mentioned that I'm going to try to connect through a Zoom call with my siblings tomorrow. And it got me thinking about how much technology has changed our lives. There's so many blessings that technology has brought in. The ability to talk to a doctor over an iPad, I think that's incredible. The ability to communicate with people through social media platforms like Instagram or Facebook or whatever the latest. I guess TikTok is the latest. I don't think I dance well, so perhaps TikTok is not in my future, I don't think. But the point of it is technology has brought us closer. It's made nations closer. It's made people be able to come closer. It's given us incredible ways to share the gospel and to share encouraging words. Somebody asked me the other day, they go, do you subscribe to a daily devotional? I said, yeah, I have about, several thousand, Facebook friends, and I'll guarantee you that one of my friends, if not more, will post an encouraging word on their Facebook post every day. And I get blessed by that, by reading those things. I say, wow, that's a really good spiritual truth that you brought me, God, into my life. And it's all made possible by technology. We need to be thankful for the things that we have. But it's also okay to be thankful for the things we don't have. I know we're in a pandemic right now. There's a huge inrush of COVID cases, but 98% of us, according to the latest numbers from the state of Colorado, we don't have COVID. And I'm grateful that I don't have COVID. I saw Marilyn go through that. Praise God, it wasn't a severe case, and by God's grace and by some very good doctors and some help that she got at a wonderful hospital, she got through that just fine. But COVID is something that I'm grateful that we haven't had to experience it. I'm honestly grateful that this pandemic hasn't been nearly as disastrous as some of the early predictions came. It's been difficult. It's been hard. I'm not minimizing that. Boy, but do you remember what they were saying back in March? This could have been a lot worse, and praise God for His grace that it hasn't been. You know what else I'm grateful that I don't have? I'm grateful that I don't have all my old insecurities and dysfunctions. You could probably argue that I have a new set of insecurities and dysfunctions, but I have moved beyond a lot of things that I really struggled with in my 20s and 30s and even into my 40s. And I really am grateful for that. I'm grateful that I finally got to a place where I'm learning that I don't have to meet the expectations of others. People always put expectations on you about, what you should do, how you should live your life, what you should say and not say. And, that's okay. We do that. But something? I don't need to judge myself based on their expectations. I need to judge myself in the light of what God expects from me. And by His grace, it's so freeing to know that we really do serve an audience of one. I'm thankful for the fact that God has been helping us, retire debt and all kinds of things in our lives, which is it's wonderful. We're watching our house get paid down. And if you're struggling with consumer debt, if you're struggling with medical debt, if you're struggling with college debt, you're struggling with automobile debt or house debt, know this, that God can help you pay off your debts so that you can look back and say, you know something? I'm so grateful that I don't have that debt anymore. So part of being healthy is we're grateful for what we have. We're grateful for what we don't have. But maybe, and maybe most importantly, I should say, we're grateful for what we will have. When you're a child of God, you recognize that God has told us that whatever we have need of, we shouldn't just sulk about it. We should ask with thanksgiving, expecting Him to not only hear our prayer, but to not keep any good thing from us. When I was raiding Marilyn's office to find this towel, I also found this little book that I'd forgotten all about. It's called God's Promises for Your Every Need. And it was put together, some years ago by a minister named Jack Countryman. And you can actually still find it. I did. I actually Googled it and found it on Amazon. You can find it used for $2, or you can find it new for $5. And in it, what Mr. Countryman did is he grouped scriptures that are about promises, all about different needs that we have. And I was particularly drawn in preparing for this message is, what do you do when you feel dissatisfied? And so a lot of people are feeling dissatisfied this Thanksgiving season, but you don't need to be, because we know that God can bring us satisfaction. We know that Psalms 34:10 says, the young lions lack and suffer hunger, but those who seek the Lord shall not lack any good thing. We know that Jeremiah 31:14 says this, and my people shall be satisfied with my goodness. We know that Proverbs 12:14 says this, that a man will be satisfied with good by the fruit of his mouth, and the recompense of a man's hands will be rendered to him. These are incredible promises. And what Mr. Countryman did is just gather them all around different needs, and they reminded me of something that I want to remind you of, that whatever your need is, you don't need to be concerned about it, you don't need to be anxious about it, you need just to present it to God, and there's a peace of God that will transcend understanding, that will just come into your heart and give you this assurance that it's going to be okay. I don't always know how God is going to meet every need. Sometimes He meets them in the most unusual ways. But I know this, that God does meet every need if we will just stay in faith. And so we learn as we become emotionally and spiritually healthy to be thankful for what we have, being thankful for what we don't have, and thankful for what we will have. But the question then becomes, what is it that keeps us from being that emotionally and spiritually healthy person? And there's probably a number of reasons, but two that I want to share with you tonight is that sometimes I think we keep ourselves in a state of emotional and spiritual ill ease. I hope that's the right way to say that, because we resist things that change. We get upset because, sometimes life is just dynamic. What we could do yesterday, we can't do today. And what we're going to be able to do tomorrow might not be what we did the 2 days. And I'm not just talking about COVID. I'm just talking about the dynamic nature of life. Families. I got to tell you, families change. Sarah's and my relationship today, is very different than it was when we first got married and we had no kids. It's very different than when we began to have kids and the kids were small and it took a lot of attention. It's different than when we had middle schoolers, than high schoolers. We've got 2 in college and 1 that's 17 and on his way to 18 and he's driving. Our marriage, our family dynamic, all of these things are very different. And if we let it, these things can take joy out of our lives, or we can learn to adapt and be thankful for the new seasons. Did you know jobs change? Jobs change. One of the things they're telling kids in college, and I know that because I have 2 kids in college, is that you need to prepare yourself to be re-educated, because the education you get today will not carry you through for 20 or 30 or 40 years. You just need to plan to either go back to continuing education classes or find opportunities to keep your skill set up, because jobs change. When I was in my 20s, I was a consulting engineer, and I got a chance to work with AT&T while that corporation was going through a huge cultural evolution because they were being broken up and divestiture, they called it. And I can't tell you how many engineers I knew that were in their 40s and 50s who had learned one way of doing something for 25, 35, 45 years, and suddenly the rules were all different, and how hard it was on those men and women. And I just know that if that's the situation you're facing, God has a way to help you navigate job changes. He's helping Encounter navigate all of the changes with COVID and the changes in our new building and changes to how we're going to connect and all of those things. He helps us navigate changes in our bodies. You know, I alluded to the fact that I don't run anymore, and the reality is the body I have now at 58 isn't the same body I had at 48. The body I had at 48 wasn't the same at 38, and 38 wasn't the same as 28, and 28 wasn't the same as 18. You know, our seasons of life evolve, and we have to embrace that, not with bitterness, because it's normal, it's natural, it's part of God's plan, but with an understanding that in every season of life, there is something we can be thankful for. We can't resist thankfulness just because things change. But the second reason that we resist thankfulness isn't that things change, is that they remain the same. Things don't change, and we really want them to. All of us at some point in our life have prayed for God to change our circumstances, to change our situations, to change our relationships, our jobs, our whatever. We're saying, God, can't you do something about that? And when we don't see that change, sometimes there's a seed of bitterness that gathers up in our hearts, and it keeps us from being healthy and producing that thankful attitude that brings so many blessings into our lives. You know, as I was preparing this, I was reminded of the story of Paul's thorn in the flesh. You know, in 2 Corinthians 12, it talks about the fact that Paul was given this thorn in the flesh, and theologians have debated for 2,000 years what that meant. But the important thing is what he said in verse 8 of chapter 12. He said, 3 different times, not once, but 3 times, I begged the Lord to take it away from me. Not asked, not requested, but I begged God to take it away from me. And each time he said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I'm glad to boast about my weakness so that the power of Christ can work through me. And that's why I take pleasure in my weaknesses and in the insults and hardships and persecutions and troubles that I suffer for Christ. For when I am weak, then I'm strong. You know, if you're in a situation where you feel powerless and you feel weak, and you've been asking God, maybe even begging God to change your circumstances, maybe the key to releasing thankfulness in your heart and releasing that healing which brings you health, both spiritually, physically, emotionally, is to begin to tap into a fresh move of the grace of God in your life. If His strength is perfected in weakness, and when we are at our weakest moment, that is the place where God can do the biggest miracles. Maybe this is the moment when the Lord's able to turn your heart from bitterness to a heart of thanksgiving. Not for what is changing, but for the things that might not change as quickly as you and I both want. That's my prayer for all of us tonight. You see, the key to keeping a thankful attitude in our heart, and having a thankful attitude is critically important to living a healthy spiritual life, because they just work hand in hand, is to recognize the power of God's grace. And so I invite you this Thanksgiving Eve to just join with me in prayer and to simply say this after me. Say, Dear Father, in Jesus' name, I choose to be thankful. God, I choose to open up my eyes and see the incredible blessings that are around me. I'm thankful, God, for what I have. You know, God, I know the scriptures say that comparing ourselves amongst ourselves isn't wise, but God, I can't be blind to the fact that there's a lot of things I don't have, Lord, that I'm really glad I don't have. And I'm grateful for that, Father. I'm thankful for that, Father. And Father, most importantly, I know that whatever I have need of, even if I don't have it right now, not at this instance, God, I know that you have given me a promise that by your Spirit and through faith, that thing is coming into my life. That relationship is coming into my life. That healing is coming into my life. That deliverance is coming into my life. Good things are coming into my life because your word says it. So, Father, I choose to be thankful despite all the changes that are happening in my life. And Father, I choose to be thankful despite the things that aren't changing in my life. This is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, Encounter family and friends who are watching this online, thank you so much for letting us come into your family's home this Thanksgiving Eve. I want to encourage you to be a part of our services on Sunday morning. You can, of course, RSVP and be with us live, even though we are in a restricted numbers. But you can always connect with us by our YouTube channel or our Facebook posts. Please make sure you subscribe on YouTube and like us on Facebook. Again, if you have any needs, prayer requests, or whatever, or ever want to connect with us, it's simple. All you have to do is send an email to ec@ecdenver.org. This is Pastor Reece. May God bless you. May He keep you. May He cause His face to shine upon you and walk in the joy of the Lord this Thanksgiving holiday. Well, thank you for watching today. We pray that this message was a blessing to you and your family. We invite you to watch us again on Facebook or on YouTube. And if you haven't yet liked our Facebook page or are subscribing to our YouTube channel, please do so now. God bless you and your family. We look forward to connecting with you again soon.